Hi, my name is Mauricio Velasco, and I'm part of Splunk's threat research team. In this short video, I'm going to be talking about Active Directory discovery techniques, what they are, why attackers use them, how to simulate them, and how to detect them in a demo. Okay? All right. So first, what is discovery? Discovery is the tactic that consists of the techniques an adversary may use to gain knowledge about a network or a system. Think about the scenario where an attacker obtains an initial foothold in a network. They don't know the network. They need to map the network. They need to figure out where the users are, where the data lives, etc. This is discovery, right? Within Active Directory, we know attackers execute these techniques, of course, and we have threat intelligence reporting that confirms this. For example, from the DFIR report, we know a lot of ransomware actors and their operations. They always execute a similar set of commands to map the network, right? And in the recently Conti ransomware playbook leak, if we read through it, there's a lot of parts about Active Directory, and they even say we need to understand Active Directory and understand the users. So we know attackers are after Active Directory and execute discovery techniques, and we need to do something about it, which is why the team wrote this analytics story. So we are releasing, or we released already 74 new detection analytics that cover Active Directory discovery techniques. And we focus mostly on two data sources. Process execution and command line logging, such as Windows events natively, event 4688, or we're talking about Sysmon or any other EDR technology, this type of events, and also PowerShell script logging. Right, these are the two main data sources that we use to create these detections. So let's quickly jump to a demo. In this demo, we're going to be using a few tools, the attack range, Splunk's attack range to build an environment with a domain controller, a few endpoints. We're going to use Bad Blood to fill this Active Directory environment with objects like users, computers, groups, etc. All these endpoints are going to be logging into Splunk, from which we're going to look at the telemetry and detect. And we're going to be using two simulation tools to attack or to simulate attacks: POSH C2, Command and Control Framework, and PokerSharp, an adversary simulation tool. So let's quickly jump to our environment. So first, I'm going to show you my attack range. I have a few endpoints here. And our domain controller, a Windows host, a Kali Linux. I'm going to jump into the Kali Linux, and we're going to start our POSH C2 server, and we're going to connect to the client so we can start getting some implants, some victims. Okay, so we have this running, and now we have in our environment this computer that we're going to infect. Think about a phishing attack or something like that. A user opens an email or something like this, and an attacker obtains an initial implant in this network, right? So now that the attacker is controlling this endpoint, it's going to execute commands from here, and we're going to see the results here. So let's start executing some techniques. One of the first things an attacker is going to do is, hey, who is this user that I have infected in this network, right? So we can use who am I for that to get the domain and the user. Or an attacker may choose to use a different command to get the same information. Now we get the same user. And yet another way we're going to use to get the user. So there's different ways of executing the same technique, which is why we wrote so many detections to try to cover all of them, right? In this case, we execute this. So if we move to our Splunk environment now, we see that first technique, system owner discovery, all the commands that we executed as part of this technique. And we get some hits. We should get some hits detected. We see this, who am I being used? We see query user. We see the PowerShell being used to get the user, etc. Right? So moving on, the attacker knows the user. The attacker wants to know now about this user in the domain, right? So we can use the net tools to get more information about this user. and the attacker will be able to know that this user is part of these groups, the last time they logged in, etc. Perhaps we want to know more about the users in the network. So it may execute this to get a list of users in the network that we can maybe target, right? Maybe do password spraying attacks. An attacker may use PowerShell to do the same and get 20 users from the network, from the domain. Right, just showing different ways of doing the same technique. The last way, we're going to use WMI with WMIC. This command will get a list of all domain users. If we move on to our second technique, which is domain account discovery, and we refresh this, we're going to see some hits from some of these detections, right? As we can see here, net user and all these others. Okay. So for the last technique for remote system discovery, an attacker may want to understand the endpoints on our network. Execute some of these techniques, this to get a list of domain controllers. For example, we get this domain controller right now. We can execute this PowerShell command to get a list of 20 endpoints. And we should see the results here. We see all these endpoint names. So now an attacker knows this host exists in the network. This is a cool one using the ADSI searcher accelerator to query LDAP directly, and we can query LDAP and get a list of all these computers, right? And one last way of doing this using get WMI. So now if we move on to this dashboard where we have the detections, we're going to see some hits, right? With NL test and get AD computer, ADSI searcher, and get. So different ways of executing the same technique will give us coverage. Sorry, different ways of detecting the same the technique will give us coverage. So we've executed these techniques manually. Of course, there's other ways of executing these techniques in a more automated way, using a tool like Purple Sharp that allows us to simulate techniques. In this case, we have this playbook, and we're going to execute all these techniques in two variations using the command line and using PowerShell. And we can do that just by passing these JSON files a parameter. And techniques will start executing. So now we should see yet this fourth technique, local account discovery, being some of these executions being detected, as we can see here. So that was the demo, and we're gonna wrap up and say thank you and make sure you read the blog post. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Happy to answer any questions. Okay. All right. Have a good one.